Welcome back. We're talking about Suicide Awareness Week, and we've talked about the biological factors, the psychological factors. Now we're going to talk about the social factors. Who kills themselves? More common, people who are isolated, people who are not connected
That makes sense.
to a group. Social isolation is bad for your brain. There's actually a higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease, clearly a higher incidence of depression in people who are lonely.
So interesting. People who are isolated, that completely makes sense. Haven't they done studies on if you are isolated, it's good to have a pet even? I know that sounds crazy, but when people know that their pets are counting on them, it makes a difference for them. Does it not?
It gives them purpose.
Right.
Right? I mean,
they don't want them-
Aslan taking him for a walk in the morning, that gives him purpose.
And like the cat, like I know, like what would happen to him, right? You think about these things. So it's like having a baby.
So
they're dependent.
So being connected really helps. So when I was a medical student, I took a month elective called emergency psychiatry. So we handled all the cases in the emergency room, and suicide is the most common reason that a psychiatrist is called into the emergency room. And we had to learn how to evaluate people quickly. And one of my professors had what he called the target theory of suicide. And what that is when you evaluate someone who's suicidal, you want to go, what's the goal of the behavior? Is it that they want to change someone else, or you can't find the reason for the behavior? So the target theory is, who's the target? Is it
They want to hurt someone?
somebody broke up with them?
Right.
And they claim, you don't do well with this, they claim
I
that
don't.
if they don't come back, that they're going to kill themselves. And so you want to go, who's the target to their behavior? And if it's another person, and the person gives in to the behavior, so they go, okay, I'm coming back to you so you don't kill yourself. That person is acutely safe. You can send them home, but they're chronically dangerous because someone has taught them that they can manipulate others with suicidal behavior.
So I'm not a bad person after all.
Do you want to explain that to our group?
I had someone do that very thing. So I wasn't just evil. I didn't just say, well, go ahead. I didn't do that. I basically said, as a nurse, I have to report you. So this is not something that I am qualified to handle. I'm going to call someone to handle it. And one of two things is happening. You're either manipulating me or you're serious. If you're manipulating me, I definitely don't want you in my life. And if you're not manipulating me, you need to be seen by someone who's professional and can handle this. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it didn't go over very well.
That's perfect. Your answer to that situation was perfect. And as soon as you said that to him,
Snapped
what did he
him
say?
right out of it, got really upset. No, don't call anybody. Bye.
So that's a perfect way to handle it. Too often people give in because they don't want the guilt associated with it. But you actually offered help, but you didn't give in to the behavior. People who don't give in to the behavior, that person's at risk if they're not going to give up the idea. He gave up the idea of it because he was clearly manipulating you. But if they don't give up the idea, you need to hospitalize them because they're dangerous.
And I basically said, I'm hanging up and calling 911.
Now, when you cannot find a target to the behavior, those people are dangerous. They have had a head injury, they have low thyroid, they have a major depression, or they're in a bipolar depression, and they're dangerous, and you have to be very protective of them. So you see, you can find the target, you give in to the target, so safe now but chronically dangerous. You don't give in, and they don't give up the idea of killing themselves. They're dangerous. You need to protect them. Or you can't find the target. You need to figure out why.
So this is sort of a bizarre question, maybe. When someone is, if you determine as a professional that someone is truly suicidal, you can't find this target, how dangerous are they to others?
Well, that's a different
I mean, if someone is dangerous to themselves, are they potentially dangerous to others?
Potentially. And, we've all heard cases in the news repeatedly over the years of people who killed other people and then killed themselves. So one of the theories about the school shooters is they are in fact suicidal, and they're going to take a lot of people with them. So they are devoid of a spiritual anchor, which we're going to talk about.
Because my thought is, if you're getting to the place where you're willing to take your own life, other people's lives really don't mean that much to you.
Well, not necessarily, because there are many people who kill themselves who are highly moral people. They never would hurt anyone.
Okay.
And then there are people, either because they have damage to their frontal lobes or they're morally bankrupt, that I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to take as many people with me. And that's not uncommon. And one of the risk factors for suicide is relational breakups.
Right.
So, talking about this social
custody battles and
circle, not only custody battles, but divorce,
right.
breakups. I often say people are never as crazy as the first 6 months when they're getting divorced.
Oh, no, and domestic violence calls are what police officers are most afraid of.
Right, because when our relationships break apart, that's when people tend to be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's why getting your relationships right, in my new book, Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, there's a whole chapter on attachments and how important they are. Because if your relationships aren't right, you're not right. There's actually treatment for depression called interpersonal psychotherapy. Teaching people to get along better with others actually treats depression in some studies as effectively is antidepressant medication. And when we get along, happy as can be, and if for whatever reason we're fighting, that makes me miserable. Now, I tend to be more homicidal than suicidal, right? F you is always better than F me. You always say, that's always healthier. But
I'm glad you said that, not me. Finally, it's not me.
So getting your relationships right is critical. And when you see people that have problems with suicidal thoughts, surrounding them with other people. I think one of the most effective things we do for people here at Amen Clinics is not only do we evaluate you, we sort of want to evaluate your system and how can we get you more connected to other healthy people, because that just helps you so much.
Right. I like it.
So if we want to talk quickly, if you want to improve your relationships, ask yourself today, what is it I can do to make my relationships better? Have empathy for other people, be a good listener, be assertive, but the words I always say for assertiveness is firm
and kind.
Also, learn to have grace and be forgiving. It's so powerful. Forgiveness is just so powerful. Notice what you like about other people more than what you don't. That's really some of the simple ways to begin to improve your relationships.
I think sometimes if you're in a really bad place, just doing one small, nice thing for someone else can turn it around. So
there's actually a study from Baltimore, the Baltimore Longevity Study. So it's a fairly famous study where they got people to volunteer. And over the next year, compared to the people who didn't volunteer, their hippocampus, that area in your brain we've talked about, the hippocampus is Greek for seahorse, that's involved with mood and memory, actually grew.
Interesting.
In the volunteers. So get outside of your head. And Barbara Bush actually wrote about this when her husband was head of the CIA. He stopped talking to her because he couldn't talk to her because all the things were classified. And she got very very depressed. It was around the time she went into menopause. So there were hormonal issues, so biological issues. But the social issues were really important because she felt very
excluded,
connected to him, and now she's very lonely. And what she found that really helped her a lot was she volunteered. So she got outside of her head into the head of other people, and it just made a huge positive difference.
So I just had an experience really quickly with one of my nieces, who she's been doing really well. She went to church camp recently and had this amazing experience, but came home. It's hard to keep up that high when you come home. She comes home and she kind of got back into the whole teenage thing of like bashing yourself, and so she felt really bad about herself one day, and she was beating herself up and just had a full-blown meltdown of just like how much she doesn't like herself, and she was just going crazy. And so I went and picked her up and I said, so what's different this week than last week? You were so high last week. What changed this week? And I wanted her to identify it. So I kept asking her questions to get her to identify it. And so basically we got, I kept doing this until she finally got to what I was trying to get her to get to. So basically what it was is, last week you were around a whole bunch of people who were thinking about something bigger than themselves, right? They were focusing on amazing projects and togetherness and just really focusing on something much bigger than yourself. You had no social media and you had no mirrors. You had no makeup on and you had no mirrors, and you did not feel bad about yourself, not even once. But you came home, nose back in the mirror, nose back in social media. You're back thinking about the same things. You're not focused on that thing that's bigger than yourself or with your same group. And what happened? You spiraled, went right down the drain, went right back into a depression. And isn't that interesting? She goes, well, what can I do? I go, well, you tell me what you can do. So we went back and forth for a while, and she goes, well, I guess I could start thinking about something bigger than myself. Wow.
And that will lead us into the spiritual component of preventing suicide. Stay with us. Use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or on our supplements at brainmdhealth.com. Thank you for listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. Go to iTunes and leave a review, and you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to get a free signed copy of the Brain Warriors Way and the Brain Warriors Way cookbook we give away every month.